The warning klaxons had been blaring for 3 minutes before Captain Hayes finally silenced them with a vicious slap to the control panel. In the sudden quiet, the only sound was the labored breathing of the ship's life support system and the soft whimper coming from the cargo bay. "Damn it!" Hayes muttered, running a hand through his graying hair. He looked at the fuel gauge one more time as if staring at it might make the numbers change. They didn't. The Meridian Dawn was dead in space, 3 weeks from the nearest station, with enough auxiliary power for maybe 48 hours of life support. And he had a passenger he couldn't save. Hayes made his way to the cargo bay, each step feeling heavier than the last. He found her exactly where he'd left her. Zara, a young Voltorian girl no more than 16 standard years old, huddled in the corner near the cryopod that had failed 2 days into their journey. Her orange skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and her blonde hair hung limp around her delicate face. When she saw him, her amber eyes lit up with desperate hope. "Did you fix it?" she asked in heavily accented Universal Standard. "Can we go now?" Hayes felt something twist in his chest. "No, kid, I'm sorry, we're out of fuel. Main engines are dead." The hope in her eyes guttered out like a candle. "Oh." Hayes sat down on a cargo crate, suddenly exhausted. The Meridian Dawn was a small transport vessel designed for a crew of 4. Right now, it held 2 people, him and Zara. The rest of the crew had disembarked at the last station, and Hayes had taken on what was supposed to be a simple solo run to deliver Zara to her family in the core systems. A routine job, easy money, except the fuel reserves had been contaminated, sabotage, Hayes suspected, though it didn't matter now. And the ship's emergency beacon was fried because Hayes had been putting off maintenance for 6 months. All his chickens coming home to roost at the worst possible time. "So what happens now?" Zara asked quietly. Hayes looked at her, this kid who'd been fleeing a war zone, who'd saved up everything her family had to book passage to safety. "Now we wait for someone to find us. I've been broadcasting a distress signal on all frequencies. Someone will pick it up eventually." "How long?" "Could be days. Be weeks." Hayes didn't mention it could also be never. This wasn't exactly a high-traffic shipping lane. Zara processed this information with a maturity that seemed beyond her years. "The life support won't last that long, will it?" Hayes had always hated smart kids. They asked the hard questions. "No, it won't." "I see." Zara pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller. "I'm sorry I'm here. If it was just you, maybe you'd have enough power to—" "Stop that right now," Hayes said sharply. "This isn't your fault. It's mine for not maintaining my ship properly, for taking shortcuts, for being a stubborn old bastard who thought he knew better than safety regulations." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their situation settling over them like a blanket. Hayes found himself studying Zara, really looking at her for the first time. She was tall for her age, all gangly limbs and uncertain grace. Voltorians were known for their artistic abilities and gentle natures, completely unsuited for the brutal war that had consumed their homeworld. How many other kids like her were scattered across the galaxy, torn from their families, just trying to survive? "Tell me about your family," Hayes said, surprising himself. Zara looked up, startled. "Why?" "Because we've got time to kill, and I'd rather spend it talking than sitting in silence thinking about all the ways I've screwed up my life." A small smile tugged at Zara's lips. "My mother is an artist. She paints nebulas not from photographs, but from memory after seeing them once. My father is a musician. He plays the theremin, which is this instrument with strings that vibrate at different frequencies. They met at a gallery showing where he was performing and she was exhibiting. Sounds romantic. It was, according to them. They never stopped being in love even after 20 years together, even when the war came. Zara's voice caught. They sold everything to get me on a transport off-world. They were supposed to follow on the next ship, but the next ship never came, Hayes finished quietly. Zara nodded, tears streaming down her orange cheeks. I don't know if they're alive. The communications networks collapsed before I could confirm they made it out. My aunt lives in the core systems. She was supposed to help me find them, or at least find out what happened to them. Hayes felt the familiar ache of old grief. He'd lost people, too. Everyone who lived long enough in space lost people. I'm sorry, kid. My name is Zara, she said with a touch of defiance. Not kid. Fair enough, I'm Hayes, not captain, not old man, just Hayes. They talked through the night cycle, or what passed for night on the ship. Zara told him about growing up on Voltoria, about running through gardens filled with bioluminescent flowers, about festivals where entire cities would create collaborative murals that spanned kilometers. Hayes found himself sharing stories too, things he hadn't talked about in years. His daughter, who died in a shuttle accident when she was just a bit older than Zara. His ex-wife, who'd left him because he loved space more than he loved staying home. The dreams he'd had as a young pilot that had slowly calcified into cynicism and routine. You sound sad, Zara observed as the ship's lights dimmed to simulate evening. I am sad, Hayes admitted. I'm sad that I wasted so much time being angry at the universe. I'm sad that I'm going to die in this tin can in the middle of nowhere, and I'm especially sad that I'm taking you with me. We haven't died yet, Zara pointed out. Humans have a saying, yes, it's not over until it's over. Something like that. Then maybe we should act like we're going to survive, instead of sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves. Hayes looked at this skinny alien kid with her defiant amber eyes and felt something shift inside him. You know what? You're absolutely right. Come on. He led Zara to the observation deck, a small bubble of reinforced glass that offered a 360-degree view of space. They were drifting in a relatively empty sector, but the stars still blazed in their billions, a tapestry of light against infinite darkness. My father taught me the constellations, Zara said softly. Would you like to learn them? The Voltorian ones, I mean, they're different from Earth's. I'd like that. So Zara taught him. She pointed out patterns in the stars, weaving stories about ancient Voltorian heroes and cosmic love affairs. Her voice grew stronger as she talked, less like a scared refugee and more like the artist's daughter she was. Hayes listened and watched, and for a little while he forgot they were dying. The next day, ship's time anyway, Hayes inventoried their resources with ruthless honesty. 42 hours of life support remaining. Water for maybe 3 days if they were careful. Food for a week, not that it mattered. And one working escape pod designed for emergencies, equipped with a cryo-sleep chamber and enough power to keep one person alive for up to 6 months. One person. Hayes stared at the escape pod for a long time, running calculations in his head. If he put Zara in cryo-sleep and launched the pod, it would automatically broadcast a distress beacon. The pod's systems were independent of the ship's, which meant they were still functional. Someone would find her eventually. She'd survive. But there was only room for one. That evening, Hayes made dinner, or as close to dinner as you could get with rehydrated ration packs. He and Zara ate together in the galley, and he told her jokes that made her laugh despite everything. He taught her a card game his daughter used to love, and she taught him a Volturian finger-weaving technique that created intricate patterns. "Hayes," Zara said as they finished their meal, "I've been thinking about the escape pod." Hayes felt his stomach drop. Course, she'd figured it out. She was smart. "Yeah, you should take it. You're the pilot. You have experience surviving in space. I'm just a kid who doesn't know anything. It makes sense." "No," Hayes said immediately. "But, Zara, listen to me. I've lived my life. I made my choices, and most of them were pretty stupid. But you've barely started. You've got your whole future ahead of you. You've got family waiting for you. You matter." "So do you?" Zara insisted, her voice rising. "You matter, too. You're not just some old pilot who made mistakes. You're kind and you're smart, and you've been taking care of me even though you don't have to. You deserve to live just as much as I do. Maybe, but if I have to choose between us, I choose you every time." They argued about it for hours. Zara refused to accept the escape pod unless Hayes went with her, which was physically impossible. Hayes refused to let Zara sacrifice herself for a bitter old man who'd wasted most of his life. They went in circles, voices rising and falling, until finally they both fell silent, exhausted. "There has to be another way," Zara whispered. Hayes wished he could tell her she was right, but he'd run every scenario he could think of, and they all ended the same way. One of them lives, one of them doesn't. On the 36th hour, something changed. Hayes was dozing in the pilot's chair when the communications console lit up with an incoming transmission. He jolted awake, his heart racing, and slapped the receive button. "I repeat, this is the cargo vessel Astral Fortune responding to your distress beacon. What is your status?" Hayes nearly cried. "This is Captain Hayes of the Meridian Dawn. We're dead in space, life support critical. 2 souls aboard. Please confirm you can assist." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then, "Confirmed Meridian Dawn. We're altering course to intercept. ETA 20 hours. Can you maintain life support that long?" Hayes looked at the readings. 20 hours would drain them down to fumes, but it was possible, barely. "Affirmative, we'll be here." He found Zara in the cargo bay and pulled her into a hug that surprised them both. "We're going to make it, kid. Someone found us." Zara clung to him, sobbing with relief. "I told you, it's not over until it's over." The next 20 hours were the longest of Hayes's life. He and Zara rationed the life support carefully, sitting together in the observation deck to conserve warmth as the ship grew steadily colder. They wrapped themselves in emergency blankets and talked about the future. "What will you do after this?" Zara asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'll finally get the Meridian Dawn properly repaired. Maybe I'll take on a real crew instead of solo runs. Maybe I'll stop being such a stubborn bastard and actually follow safety regulations. Maybe you could visit me sometime in the core systems after I find my aunt." Hayes felt that twist in his chest again, the one that hurt in a good way. "I'd like that. You could meet my family if I find them, if they're alive." Zara's voice was small, vulnerable in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be before. "When you find them," Hayes corrected gently. "Not if, when, and yes, I'd be honored to meet them." When the Astral Fortune finally appeared on their scanners, Hayes and Zara were barely conscious from the cold and oxygen deprivation. But they were alive. The rescue crew worked quickly, transferring them to the larger ship and flooding them with warm air and medical attention. The captain of the Astral Fortune, a no-nonsense woman named Rodriguez, found Hayes in the medical bay after he'd been cleared by the doctor. "You got lucky," she said. "Another few hours and you'd both be dead." "Don't I know it?" Hayes replied. "The girl, Zara, she says you were planning to put her in the escape pod, save her instead of yourself." Hayes shrugged. "Seemed like the right thing to do." Rodriguez studied him for a moment. "I've been a captain for 15 years, Hayes. I've seen a lot of people in crisis situations. Most of them panic, make stupid decisions, think only about themselves. But you were ready to die for a kid you barely knew. That takes guts and heart." "Or stupidity," Hayes muttered. "Maybe a little of both," Rodriguez smiled. "We're heading to the core systems. I can drop you both off there if you want. No charge. Consider it a professional courtesy from one captain to another." 3 days later, Hayes stood in a bustling spaceport in the core systems, watching Zara reunite with her aunt. The resemblance was striking. The same orange skin, the same blonde hair, the same amber eyes. They embraced and cried, and Hayes felt like he was intruding on something private. He was turning to leave when Zara broke away from her aunt and ran to him. "You weren't going to say goodbye?" she accused. "Figured you had more important things to worry about." "Hayes, you saved my life. That's pretty important." She pressed something into his hand, a small data chip. "That's my contact information, my aunt's address. Promise me you'll stay in touch. Promise me this isn't the last time I see you." Hayes looked down at the chip, then at this remarkable kid who'd somehow become important to him in just a few desperate days. "I promise." "Good, because I'm going to keep looking for my parents, and when I find them I want you there. I want them to meet the grumpy old human who refused to give up on me." Hayes laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "Who are you calling old?" Zara grinned. "You are old, but you're also brave and kind, and you make terrible jokes. My parents will love you." As Hayes watched Zara walk away with her aunt, her hand waving until she disappeared into the crowd, he realized something. For the first time in years, he had something to look forward to, something worth living for beyond just the next cargo run. Their ship had run out of fuel, leaving them alone and dying in the void of space. But somehow in those desperate hours, they'd found something more valuable than any amount of fuel. They'd found hope. They'd found purpose. They'd found each other. And that, Hayes thought as he boarded a shuttle to pick up his repaired ship, made all the difference.